Hello and welcome to our session. My name is Jamey McIntosh. I'm the Education Programs Manager at RealityWorks, and I'm excited to have you here today with us. So we're going to get started here, and I want to share with you my presentation today, which I'm excited to be able to share with you. It is Simulate, Replicate, and Evaluate, really looking at how we can bring animal and plant science from the field into your classroom. Our focus here is to give you some tips and ideas on how you can include the best practices for your classroom, as we can't always get out into the field, out into doing the real thing. How can we bring it into the classroom and help there? So RealityWorks has kind of our hands in a lot of different educational tools and skills training, from family consumer science to health science, agriculture, and welding and trade skills. Today, we're really going to focus on that agricultural aspect and try to help you get a good understanding of how you can bring the classroom to your students by bringing simulation and educational tools into your classroom. So I think we're all excited to get back into the classroom. I know there's still some of that hybrid, some of that learning that's going on, but ultimately it's that enjoyment of coming back in, being able to see your students and interact with them. Now, our objective today is to really focus on really three main areas. Simulate. What simulation can you bring look like into your classroom? What can you bring in? What does it look like? The importance of simulation and how it can help student learning, and also focusing on engagement of your students. Then we're going to focus on replication, this ability to overcome challenges and replicate important skill development over and over again. Then we'll finish off looking at evaluate. What are the students like and how do they learn? How can we evaluate our students and then help them learn through different concepts, and then checking their work to make sure that they are learning what they're supposed to be learning. So just to start out with, we know that ag education is the single largest employer. Agriculture is the single largest employer in the world. All right, that is not going to stop anytime soon. As we see the world changing, we also see the need for agriculture in the workforce. And as we grow in population, it is something that will continue to grow, but it might shift. And that's something we want to talk about today, is how might it shift? Well, we're seeing a lot of challenges in agriculture education today. A lot of times there's less students coming from the farm. That can then create teachers having to go back and either reteach or teach for the first time some concepts that they didn't have to in the past. There's also fewer options right now for going out into the agricultural world for study. A lot of times it is because of biosecurity, biodiversity, the concerns of the world we're in right now. There's not always the option to go out there. What that means is that there's a larger need to bring learning into the classroom, bring it to where the students are, as well as look at what are your students' interests and abilities and what career choices are in your region, and then bring that to your students. And then it's always that challenge for ag education is, how do you get students to see what career options and opportunities are out there for them? That is a goal that we always have, and we always want our students to see, but sometimes it does take more work to get them to understand just how big and what different options they may have. Now that brings challenges right to you, the instructor. So what this means is there is always going to be a need for creating that individualized learning. For every student matters, and every student, what can we do to help them? It also involves managing the classroom and the students effectively. How do we help manage the classroom, which then ultimately helps the students be more effective and efficient in the classroom? And it's always important to keep safety a priority. That's becoming bigger and bigger as we try to, again, bring things into the classroom, bring that learning, that hands-on learning to your students. Now, in this world, that's not only for the students, it's also for the animals itself. And then keep aligned to standards and educational best practices, making sure that we're hitting the mark for all of our students. Those are all different challenges that I hear time and time again for ag education. I get it, we understand it, and we want to help. So we're going to jump right into simulate. How can we help with simulating the real thing in the classroom. So CTE defines simulation as interactive experiences designed to teach students particular content or competencies by having them engage directly with the information or skills being learned in a simulated, authentic challenge. Whoa, that's a lot of different words to kind of interact with. So we're going to break it down here. All right. And what is it really asking? It's asking us to teach students particular content or competencies. Okay, we can do that. Teaching students very focused and certain concepts is something that we do every day. Now, all we're doing is we're taking ways and looking at simulations and how do we simulate those concepts and competencies so then students not only just see it or hear it, but they get a better understanding and they get to interact with it as well. Now, how does this help them? Well, kind of what we just said is that engage directly with the information or the skills being learned. So not only is taking the concepts, but again, that direct interaction. How do we get students to get that hands-on knowledge, being able to interact with that information, that concept or that skill, and being able to understand it? That's what simulation helps with. It not only brings a concept to the forefront, a concept in the classroom, but it allows them to interact with it, to be able to gain that learning and that knowledge by doing. So that's what simulation is. How can we help in that world? Well, one of the things we found at Reality Works is that sometimes there is a need for simulation, especially in agriculture education, because a lot of times there can be issues where simulation hands-on learning, doing the real thing just can be a problem. So sometimes you would rather do simulation because the real thing for educational purposes is just too big. There's too large, it's too hard to actually do. So can you replicate it? In some cases, schools will maybe have a school farm. In other areas, that's just too big. You can't do that with the property that you have, with the legal ramifications, the liability, or the school's just not interested in doing that and helping you in that way. Well, in this case, that might be too big or too costly. And so how can you bring simulation in to still get that understanding that maybe a farm would have helped with, but you can't do? In ag education, it's also sometimes too dangerous. And when we talk too dangerous, we're not just talking for the students, for you, we're also talking about the animals, all right? We're talking about, in some cases where at one time you might have went out to a farm and be able to interact with the animals and the livestock, or even the crops and the plants. Now, it might be seen as too dangerous to let students interact because it could be harmful to animals, could be harmful to students. And so that's something where simulation becomes a big piece of the puzzle. And then too repetitive. Some of the products we have involve injections into animals. Well, if you have a class of 20 to 25 students to be repetitively doing that to an animal, that would be, again, going back up, that would be too dangerous to the animal, be harmful for the animal. So you can't always do the repetitive nature. So simulation's ability for your students to do it over and over and over again, allowing them to learn without having the problem of hurting or having it be something too repetitive on an animal. And then sometimes it's too difficult to manipulate. Being able to practice first can always be helpful. Being able to practice in a safe environment, in a challenging but nurturing environment can be very, very helpful for student learning. But if they go out and they're working with animals and the animals are getting agitated, the students are getting agitated, it can be difficult to manipulate and to interact with them. It can be a difficult concept to have to teach. And so allowing simulation to help teach students the proper technique, the proper skill is very important. So how do simulations help student learning? Well, there's really kind of different ways to look at this. All right. And we're going to walk through kind of each different step here. First one is authentic scenarios. This is one way that simulations can help student learning. Now, again, authentic scenarios are where you replicate the complexity and unpredictability of a real world context. Now, by doing this, that's as authentic as you can get. You simulate RealityWorks had different products like our bovine breeder, our bovine injection. It's doing as close to the real thing or the real world context as you can. It's challenging students to do it, but it's in a simulation mode. So it's the kind of one step back, but it's giving you those authentic scenarios. That can be a way to help students. Simulations can run in and work not only as a standalone, but it's also something where it can be a flexible tool. So it can be an opportunity to reinforce, to introduce, or to assess different key concepts and context. So, for example, when you're doing simulation, you might start with an in-class presentation on a topic or a skill, letting students to learn and understand what's going on. And then you may take a simulation and demonstrate it yourself first before letting a student ever be able to do it, allowing them to visually see what you're doing before they get the chance to do it. And then finally, after a demo, maybe you let them get the opportunity and you let them do the simulation. This all helps to bring about a scaffolding learning, as well as reinforcing and introducing key concepts for the student before they get to do the real thing. Another piece of it is that simulations help student learning by facilitating success. When you can show a student exactly what they need to do, be able to have them practice it repeatedly over and over, and then show you in a assessment format, it allows them to be able to understand what the expectation is, how to do the skill, and then what they're going to be assessed on. This helps to remove any type of fear or failure by giving them that repeated opportunity to do it over and over again, allowing them not only to look back and reflect and say, wow, when I first started, I might not have been very good, but look at where I have come and how confident I am and how good my skill has become. It also allows them to challenge and take a kind of a learning on their own to be able to see, okay, am I doing it correct? What do I need to do differently? How difficult is this before I go and do the real thing? And then the last one is it can create excitement. Simulations can create huge excitement in a classroom because a lot of times the simulations are fun. It allows students to get as close to the real thing, which they want to do anyway, and be able to do it in a controlled environment. It also can bring up a lot of laughter and some humorous situations because a lot of times that first time they may not be very good. And so it is something where they're figuring it out. And as they figure it out, they then learn and they gain that confidence. But again, it can be pretty funny the first few times a student tries different simulations because they've never done it before, or they're figuring out how to do it. And they can look back and say, wow, I've really changed and I've learned from using simulation. So from having authentic scenarios, being a flexible tool, facilitating success, and creating excitement, these are all ways that this can engage and help in your classroom and bring your classroom to another level of learning. Now, with that being said, there is a need for this in our society. Within schools, we have seen and studies have been shown that students can feel disengaged from learning. Now, unfortunately, with the pandemic and things going on in our world, this can be even higher than what some of these surveys from the last few years have shown. So students can sometimes not feel challenged. They can also feel like they're not interacting or have an understanding with their teachers. There's the lack of relevancy of how is this important? Being able to use simulation can really change that disengagement to engagement for your students because all of a sudden there are new ways to learn. There are opportunities to gain confidence. Students then can start seeing and connecting the dots from why is this important here in the classroom and how it pertains to the real world. And then there's also where sometimes the material can change because all of a sudden they're in the driver's seat and they're the ones leading their own learning, taking away that question of why is this important, or this is boring, or it doesn't really have anything pertain to me. This can be a game changer when you are looking at students and student success and engaging your students with learning. So again, how do simulations help students? Authentic scenarios, flexible tools, facilitate success, and create excitement. These things all come into play when you use simulation in the classroom. And it can be a whole range of different simulations in the classroom. So some of the things that you can bring simulation to life in your classroom are kind of, in this case, we have a lot of different training tools, from specific trainings, artificial insemination, birthing, castration, swine litter processing, very specific trainings using simulation. There's also other kind of more broad system trainings here, where you can have either reproductive or digestive or muscular trainings and system specific focuses there, learning kind of more broad of how animals in general or plants in general are put together. And then finally, your animal anatomy, from the systems, the locations, the functions of the anatomy, learning and gaining understanding in that world. And so it can go from a very broad range of animal anatomy to specific focuses and systems, to then specific training as well. All of this helps bring simulation to life, but it helps your students engage and learn through using simulation. Now, in our world, we have some just amazing animal science anatomical models. Every single model that we have includes removable organs, allowing students to take apart the organs, take the organs out of the body. It is a cross-sectional split of these organs so they can see inside, be able to understand. We also have curriculum on every single anatomical model in the agriculture world, and quick start guides giving terminology and assembly instructions, allowing you to be able to use these as not only demonstration tools, but also as tools to allow hands-on learning. Have students take apart, see the systems, interact with the systems, be able to know what the differences from different systems are. All of these allow you to be able to engage your students in different types of anatomical understanding and training. We also have skeletal systems, allowing your students to not only understand the muscular, the digestive system, but also skeletal systems that are included there. Now, you can break it down even farther as we bring you reproductive system models and digestive system models. So if you want to focus just on certain systems, we also have models allowing students to then look at those, interact with them, and then take those pieces apart. All coming with curriculum, allowing in-class interaction and also work activities for your students to gain knowledge. Now, other things that we include are even things like hoof and udder models, allowing them to dig down into areas of the body that a picture can show, but to be able to feel and touch and understand what's going on allows a different type of engagement for your students. So again, we bring different types of simulation to life using different type of training tools. Now, that brings us to replicate, because some of our training tools are not just models. They are things that you can use to be able to replicate the real thing. Going in and doing artificial insemination and practicing that and having be as lifelike as possible can be a helpful tool for students. Now, how we look at this, we have a formula that we call a skill-focused engagement. And the way this formula works is it starts with focusing on skill development. Once you have a good base knowledge of understanding of the animal or the concept or the process, we then go into skill refinement. Once we have refined some of those motor skills, some of those abilities that we do, we focus on skill performance. Can you do that repeatedly? Can you do that in a stressful situation? Can you do it when it doesn't seem to be normal, but rather an abnormal situation? And then we finish up with skill sharing. Can we share the skills, and can we ultimately teach others those skills as well? So to walk through these, give a little bit more concept to this, one of the things you need to be thinking about and looking at, and how can you do this in your own classroom, is skill development. How do you get students doing? Creating tangible ways to bring concepts to hands-on learning. So skill development is all about giving relevance to what they're doing. All right, here's animal anatomy. Great. How then, and what is it that I need to learn about animal anatomy? what can I do to help in that world? So being able to know where the location of things are, what the functions are, being able to get students to do that learning is the first step. The next one would be skill refinement. Now that I have that understanding and I'm able to try it and see, let's start taking some risks. Let's start trying different things, seeing different things, figuring out what's going on. What is it that if I do this or I do that, does that help the animal? Does that help my crop? Does that hurt my animal? Does that hurt the crop? Does that hurt the plants? Does that help? Where is it in that skill refinement? This allows you to challenge students, get them into worlds that we love to talk about, like problem solving and critical thinking. And then we get to skill performance. Once they've been able to challenge, a lot of times what that comes with is that confidence. Now we need to see, can you do it? So you get students performing and evaluating. So it allows the skill training to really come into effect. Now, with skill training, one of the things that you can do is you can work with your students to be able to understand how and why they're doing it. Now, in some cases, it might be to get the job. In some cases, it might be to help the animal in one way or another. Some cases might be because if you don't, your business will suffer. So all of this skill performance really allows you to individualize strengths, focus on scenarios that will help the student understand why you're doing what you're doing. Again, it allows them then to go into performance mode, performing and seeing, can I do this? How good am I? Where do I maybe measure up against others? So competition becomes a key part in this performance world. Then the last one is skill sharing. Get students connect relevance of their skill with future career exploration. So connect relevance. Okay, how is this important? What does this mean? By having some of these skills and you share them, can you get a better paying job? Are there different career opportunities that you have if you understand these certain skills, if you're able to take care of this? How does this help the business bottom line if you can take care of a calf by knowing what the different issues might be when they're young and how to make sure that they don't die from those different situations? And how does that help the business and the bottom line? So skill sharing is a big piece of this as well. So in our case, some skill development. We may start with a cow model. That might be where you get that development. Know the different features and the functions of the animal. Then you have some refinement. We're going to focus just on breeding that animal. And so you get our cow uterus model, and that breeding of that animal is really focused on, do you understand all the different parts of the uterus, all the different parts of artificial insemination, all the different parts of what you need to do to make sure that that animal can be bred, can actually have the pregnancy, and then birthing the pregnancy as well. So skill performance. Now let's see if you can actually do it. We have our bovine breeder. This product allows you to do artificial insemination. See, did you do it correctly? The skill training and learning by being able to do that. And then skill sharing. We have different scenario cards that give different situations for students to start thinking about, okay, if this happens, how would I interact with that animal? If this happens, how would I act with that animal? Sharing some of their knowledge and then finding the best outcomes in that world. So again, looking to skill development to be able to create new ways to learn, moving to collaborate and gain understanding and skill mastery. Then start thinking critically and gaining an edge over the competition by having the skill, by doing the skill, and being able to understand what that skill needs. And then communicate effectively of your competency and your ability, being able to show what you can do, and ultimately hope to get that job in the industry that you're looking for. So what we hear in this world a lot is from instructor feedback is a lot of times this takes time and this can be difficult. And a lot of times there's not enough resources. And your students, again, are coming in with some less knowledge than maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago of agriculture concepts. So there's a lot of learning that needs to be done. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And there's just not enough time or resource to get it all done. What we have tried to do and tried to help is to create educational and time opportunities for you. Create repeated usage for less costs and more usefulness of the products that we have. And then everything we do is standard-based learning. It all focuses and goes back to the standards that you need to teach. So in this case, we create educational and time opportunities. One of the ways that we do this is to bring simulation into your classroom so you can use it whenever you need it. As you can see here, we have a corn stalk and a soybean model. These are two different models, and we have brought these forward because we have teachers who come and say, you know what, we teach corn and soybeans in the middle of winter. We're in a very cold climate. We don't have those out in the fields at that time to be able to teach on. So what do? We've created simulation of and models of those plants, allowing you then to also see deficiencies, issues that could come up with that, simulating them in the plant themselves, the models themselves. So another educator said, you know, no farmer wants to tell me that they have any deficiencies in the crop. Everybody wants to show that, hey, they got great crops. There's no deficiencies whatsoever. Well, in that case, they can't show their students, they can't simulate what a deficiency might look like in a corn plant. And so in this case, we brought that so then they can do it when they want and how they want to teach. Repeated usage for less cost and more usefulness. We have a greenhouse insects kit. The problem with greenhouse insects is that the only way a lot of times educators can show is that they have the pest in their greenhouse. And we never want to have those pests in our greenhouse. So we've come out with a larger than life size models of 8 of the different most seen greenhouse insects. What does that do? It allows teachers to be able to teach on these different insects, tell students what the causes that they could be, what the issue might be with the plants that these insects cause, and then how to take care of them. What do you need to do to be able to not have this in your greenhouse? Well, by doing all this, what it has helped is it helps the students to be able to see it ahead of time, be able to not have to have the pest in the greenhouse before they recognize what the problems are. And if the pest does come in, it is quicker for the students to be able to understand how to take care of them. So repeatedly using these models, all right, allows for you to use them year after year, less cost and more useful to your students. Now, everything we do, we focus on standard-based and research-based realism. So we go out and do the real thing. We then come back into our shop and our engineers work on creating as close to the real thing as possible. So we go out and we do artificial insemination before we created our bovine breeder artificial insemination product. We work on our calf simulator. So we go out and we work with calves before we completed that. When we started working on our bovine birthing and ultrasound system, we were out there working with animals and talking to educators and to vets on how the best way to actually simulate it that we could do. So let's go through some of our products that could help you in your world. All right, some of our products that we have that are our newest products are bovine fetal development models. These are rubberized life-size models, 8 different models focusing on the different stages of bovine fetal development, allowing you to be able to show and interact with every single fetal development stage for your students to understand what the stage is, what's happening to that animal during that stage, and what you can do to prepare that the pregnant cow on what it needs to be kind of doing when that animal is in that stage, that fetus is in that stage. One of our newest products are bovine birthing and ultrasound product. This is where we have a life-size actual, a life-size replica calf that you actually get to birth. So in this case, it is all part of the weight and the feel of that calf. You can put it inside of the birthing canal, and then you can actually birth the calf in about 12 different ways or positions or presentations for that calf, allowing students to gain knowledge on what could happen if that calf was breached. What would happen if it wasn't sitting how it was supposed to? How could you actually remove that animal with the safety of the calf and the mother in mind? We also have a ability to do ultrasound. So again, for your students, where you can go out and you can at least give them a knowledge of and an understanding of, okay, this is what it would look like inside of the animal. This is what you would be looking for maybe sexting purposes, for seeing if it's twins, seeing if it's still a viable pregnancy or if the fetus has died. Being able to show students some of those understandings and what they could be doing in their future careers can be very helpful to them learning and also getting engaged in the concepts that you're trying to teach. With all this, we have some great curriculum, and I want to show just a little bit of it, giving you PowerPoint presentation slides, giving you different opportunities here to be able to see the birthing stages, walking you through the different presentations, both a normal and abnormal calf presentation, allowing you to be able to understand what the different presentations are, what problems could come from them, and how you would assist in that world. From an ultrasound world, we show different slides and different things of what you should be looking at, what's happening, what does a CL look like, what does a fetus look like, what is the goal of understanding why you'd be looking in an ultrasound for. So we show and give the students that understanding of that knowledge first before they go and do the real thing. We then have our swine breeder artificial insemination simulator. Going into this world, this allows you as an instructor to talk through not only going from cows and how they're born to also being able to farrow pigs. We give piglets that allow you to actually push the piglets through the birth canal and actually do different types of scenarios that birthing might come from. We have a swine litter processing where you have 4 different piglets and you can do things like teeth clippings, castration, tail docking, ear notching. Also giving you to understand of where you would actually do any type of iron shots, walking through not only the process of litter swine processing, but talking through in the curriculum about the importance of what you're doing. We have beef and pork 3D meat cut posters, allowing your students who are interested in meat judging to be able to get an understanding of the different cuts that are available. One of our newest products is our Butcher Beef Cuts model. This model allows you, it is a lifelike half size of a real life steer, allowing you to see all the different meat cuts, being able to pull it apart, seeing the different parts and pieces of a butchered beef. This is something where if you are into and interested in any type of judging competitions, meat judging competitions, this is what you want your students to be using and looking at. We have our bovine injection simulator, allowing students to be able to learn proper injection techniques, proper placement of your injections, both jugular, intermuscular, and subcutaneous injections, allowing you to do the real thing, to do a real blood draw. In this case, you're drawing water, but being able to do blood draws and also injections. We also have a calf simulator, a life-size calf simulator, allows you to actually do esophageal tube feeding, making sure you're doing it correctly, that it's coming into the correct area that you have. Then you also have ear tagging, hormone implants, injections, blood draws on the tail, and then also castration, allowing you to know how to do correct castration on your animal. We've talked about this one a lot, about our bovine breeder artificial inseminator, allowing you to inseminate and learn the techniques of artificial insemination. Now, all of these come with curriculum, allowing you to see proper AI technique. In this case, we're talking about bovine breeder, but giving you different types of visuals, allowing for your students to be able to see not only the visual, but have it where they can try it and practice it on the real simulator itself, allowing you to teach it in the classroom and then teach it in on the real simulation. So we have our bovine AI cervix training kit, allowing students to see different types of cervixes and see how does that work and how does that fit. We have a cow anatomy 3D flip chart. This allows for you to actually write on it with it's like a whiteboard, so you can use a white dry erase marker on it. You can interact with it, have your students interact with it, and it flips open, giving you the different layers of the animal. Our bovine milking udder simulator, allowing students to understand what the California mastitis test is, training and simulating on different things of if you need to do teat dips and things of that nature. And then we also have suture kits, allowing students to be able to make their own cuts and then do their own suturing. Now, in the plant science world, we have some really great products to get students understanding about growing. So we have our hydroponic systems. Both of them have been honored with lots of awards, talking through about new ways to grow plants. So we have our plant lab unit. Our plant lab unit allows students to be able to look at and interact with the different products here, our plant producer and our plant lab. And then we have our plant science kit. Our plant science kit is a 1 week, 7 lessons, maybe 1.5 weeks of you being able to open up the box, and it has all of the things you need, from posters, trivia cards, curriculum, activities, and models. And it walks you through how to interact with every single lesson. And so you have a full week to week and a half of curriculum and lesson planning all done for you, all focusing on plant science, looking at every single kind of interactive and interconnected part of what plant science. So it's the basics for all plant science, giving you an understanding for your students. Now let's talk about evaluate. This is where we kind of bring it all together. So replicate, we talked about; simulate, we talked about; now evaluate. How do we make sure that our students are learning? Well, the evaluation process really is identifying how students learn best. Identify what you want your students to learn, and then how you want them to learn it. All brings you to identifying the path to bring them to skill development. So you need to look at your students and what are their needs? How do they learn best? What excites them? What interests them? How do you get them to learn? And then what's your kind of end in mind? How do you bring it to them? And then what's that path going to be? One of the things that we've really tried to do is help you with that evaluation process by giving you tools to be able to help your students. Well, part of that reason comes from today's learner. In some cases, we are looking at them being born from 1995 to 2010. They are looking for engagement. They want to understand, and they want to understand by trying and doing. They are tech savvy, multitasking. All right. At the same time, they probably know more about technology than we do as educators, and that's okay. But what we need to do is to help them be able to use that knowledge in an effective and in a resourceful way. So as you can see, their attention span is smaller. And so how do we get them to be able to latch on and to hold on to learning and engagement? Well, one of the things that we know is that they are a product of both the Great Recession and the pandemic. So things like security are very important to them. So tying the educational knowledge that they have with things like their future careers, with job security, with how food security is going to be, how we are going to be able to grow our country. Those are things that are going to be important for what they see and how they see the world. Competition. There is a big piece of the puzzle of wanting to learn and also learn on their own ability and do what they can get and their best on their own ability. So they see life more than just a job. They see it as skill development for everything they do. They want purpose. They want to be able to be rewarded for their hard work. But no matter what they do, they take those skills with them, and they see that as important. And finally, independence. They want to look for jobs, and they want to look for opportunities where they can decide for themselves. Having the ability and the knowledge base of a broad range of different topics within agriculture education will help them to be able to have that independence and to make those decisions on their own. So how do we help today learner evaluate? Well, I would say kind of go in a backward design world. What do you want students to be able to do as a result of learning the concepts that you're going to teach them? What will you accept as evidence of having achieved those goals? And how will you guide students through activities that allow them to practice? So let's break this down a little bit. The first one, what do you want students to be able to do as a result of learning concepts? So I would ask you to go into your classroom, go into the syllabus, into what you're teaching, and ask the question of what are the concept goals that I'm needing them to know? What are the things that it would be nice to them to know? Then I would focus on skill goals. What are the things they need to know, and how do I know that they're learning those? And then what we call enduring knowledge goals refers to overarching concepts and themes that students can understand. So when you're talking about one animal and you can go across multiple animals, say, okay, here's reproduction. And this can be an overarching theme on all the animals that we talk about. What is it that you want them to learn? And then how do you get them to do that? So going back with a backwards kind of focus here, if you can pick those concepts, those skills, and those knowledge goals that you have, that can then help determine, okay, I'm going to teach more this way over that way. I need these types of products to help, educational products to help my students. I need these types of interactivities that will help my students. So the next one comes to, how will you accept evidence in your classroom that they are achieving these goals? No, the big three that I would say is to look at accountability. Assessing student performance will represent how are they going to do in quote unquote a development stage. So looking for job preparedness. Are they doing the things they need to do to then get that job? And sometimes that doesn't connect one-on-one with the simulation that they're doing right at hand, but are they listening to instructions? Are they doing what's being asked of them? Are they taking in the scenario that's being played and played out and being able to understand what they need to do and why they need to do it? Those are all important pieces. The next one is student progress. Can you assess students over time as a result of instruction? Looking at what do they do the first week to the last week of your class? So are they progressing? Are they learning? Are they taking steps instead of you having to feed things to them? They're going out and saying, no, I want to go this way, or I want to be challenged in this way, or this is what I learned. Now I want to go out and see, is that being applied? And then finally, instruction. Probing students' responses to instruction. This is that understanding assessment. This is that doing to see how well they understand. So the simulation world, can you actually artificial inseminate? Can you actually do a blood draw? What would you do if an animal, a calf, was having an issue? Can you figure out what the response would be? Those are all ways to understand and assess if they have achieved what you want them to achieve. And finally, how would you guide students through activities that allow them to practice? Give them multiple means of engagement, simulate interest, get them to look at videos, do activities, demonstrate it yourself as the instructor before you let them do it. Have them to do a hard thing and then go show them what the right way, making them sometimes fail on purpose to have that memory and that knowledge base. Provide multiple means of action and expression, allowing them to do different types of demonstration. Have a student come up and do a demonstration for the class. If someone's doing really well in one area, have them be the leader. Have them do multimedia or demonstration presentations for other classes, for future educational classes. So if you want more students in your elementary and middle school to be interactive at the high school or the college level, have students teach students. Give them multiple ways to share their knowledge. And then provide multiple means of representation, okay? having them be able to see things differently, graphs, charts, images, doing presentations, having them manipulate the objects, give them a trial and say, okay, what would happen if you would do an artificial insemination only on one side or the other side? What is your percentage going to be? Have them dig in deeper and look at different ways to represent learning. All of this comes with different options for you to use. And we give all those options for you. We give scenarios, we give worksheets, activities, different assessment tools. Interactive engagement comes from all the simulation and the opportunities to simulate over and over and over, replicating that knowledge, that muscle memory. So the last thing I want to talk about is getting your students engaged in career exploration. So at RealityWorks, we have a free career exploration lesson plan for you. It gives you all the information, gives you all of our curriculum, and we're going to give that to you free so you can be able to go in and show students what are the different careers in animal science, animal systems, plant systems, agribusiness, food production, natural resources, and then other areas within agriculture. That's there for you, so then you can be able to engage your students and see what our curriculum and our lessons are all about. We include worksheets, PowerPoint slides, activities, opportunities for them to interact with the world around them and get a good understanding of what different career opportunities there are out there for them. Again, all of our curriculum has different presentation slides, different topics, and different hands-on models for you to be able to use, allowing your students to be able to engage fully in their own learning. So with that, how do you evaluate? You let your students interact with what they're doing. Give them that learning, get them to bring it into the classroom and engage what they're doing, and you will see the evaluation process take care of itself. Thank you very much for this time that you've given me. If you have questions, we would be happy to answer any and all questions that you have. Feel free to contact us and we will interact with you in any way possible to be able to get your answers and to help you create the best classroom that you possibly can. Thank you for your time.